Okay, wonderful. So then we are ready to start.
Right.
Now, this, when I said I was going to paint copper pots, I was going to show you how to paint copper pots. Obviously, I'm not intending to go to complete the project. It's totally impossible. That will take me 3 days to do that. So what I'm going to do is to show you my process, and then eventually I will get to a point where I actually paint a little bit. And I want you to ask all kind of questions. We have plenty of time, and but like I said, I'm going to talk a lot. I'm a talker. I explain everything in detail. But if you see that I'm missing something, interrupt me, please, and ask me the question, okay? But give me just now 2 or 3 minutes to start introducing things, and then you can start if you want to with the questions. First, so this is the painting. I'm going to kind of demonstrate how to paint, right? Why do I use this small palette? Because if I use my big palette and everything, it doesn't fit on the screen. It's hard to tell which color is what, so I don't use that when I teach. When I teach, I put a little paper where I put the colors next to, with the names, so you can identify them at all times to see what color I'm using. And this is basically, I work with a very basic palette. Usually it's only 5 or 6 colors for each painting, even though usually I have very colorful paintings. But this one in particular is very simple in the sense that you use only like 5 colors, okay? This cobalt teal is just for accents. If I want to do these little accents, it will be just for that. So that is kind of ignore that color, okay? I play for all my paintings. Basically my 3 colors are cobalt blue, quinacridone rose, and quinacridone burnt orange. Those are my 3 colors, a pink, a blue, and a brown. Basically for everything I do, for the cloth, for the copper pots, for the background, well, that's a different story. I'm lying over there. I'll show you in a second what I mean, okay? I'm going to start introducing my materials. What happens here is when I start,
those colors again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I'm going to show you which brands I use too. Okay, I'm going to put them over here. Okay, let's do this. My main brand is Daniel Smith because they're very transparent, and I work with many layers. When you work with many layers, you want to be able to overlap them nicely without them moving too much. So if you want to create a painting with multiple layers, you need colors that stain the paper, at least the first colors. And the bottom of this background, so dark, so brown, if you put a cadmium color there and you put some other color that is semi-transparent on top, they're going to move. You're not gonna get a flawless background. You want to start with staining colors. These colors are very transparent. They sink into the paper. You know how hard it is to remove these kind of colors, like quinacridones. They're impossible almost to remove. So what I usually do is to layer them. I'm gonna show you in a second, my chart. I will put, for example, a layer of permanent rose. Let it dry. Put a phthalo green on top. Let it dry. More rose, more pink, and then end up with the most opaque layers, let's say, the ones that are gonna cover any mistakes. In this case, it could be intanthron blue. So yes, I use the quinacridone rose for my backgrounds too. And I use the quinacridone burnt orange for my backgrounds sometimes too. But I will end up with, for example, intanthron blue, which is creamier and it's not exactly opaque, it's transparent, but it has more density each way. I'm gonna explain myself in a second, you're gonna see what I mean, okay? When I paint the background, it's gonna be very messy because of those colors. If those colors run into the bottom of my painting, I'm in trouble. So what do? I mask all the top area so I can paint freely, and I cover my bottom area of my painting with paper palette. So all of you oil painters know what I'm talking about. The paper palette thing, I can spill anything there. It's not going to copy, it's not going to go through or get absorbed. So this is the way I start a painting, always with my background, because it's messy. Once my background is finished, that's when I remove all that, and then I start painting these things here. But let's go back to paints. I have many charts. That's why I'm going back and forth with all these things. I have, want to show you many different charts I have. One second. Depending on what kind of background you want to do, you want to do a very soft looking one, you can do variegated kind of background. It's easy enough. You get it wet and drop the colors you want, no problem. Usually all these transparent colors I'm talking about, right? But you have to dry very, very well between layers. If you don't dry them very well, if when you touch the paper, it still feels a little cold, that means it's still done. When you touch the paper here, you touch this paper, and then you touch the one on the bottom here. They have to have the same temperature, and it needs to feel flat. If it feels bumpy, that means still wet. So the problem that most people have with backgrounds is they get streaky because they don't have the patience to wait for them to dry properly, okay? The other reason for backgrounds having trouble is because you use the wrong brush, okay? So we'll go back to colors later when we start with the other part, but this was for the just the background. I'll come back to colors in a minute. I want to show you the right brushes to paint a background. If you paint your background with a round brush, it's gonna be hard depending on what the size of your background. If it's a small little background, no big deal. You can get it wet with clean water and drop your colors there, no problem. But if you have a large background that it has a lot of intricate detail that you have to go around masking fluid and whatnot, a flat natural hair brush is the only option. Why? Because the way I hold them is they're almost full of my hand. I caress the paper with them. I just put the layers in such a soft way that and I tip my board, move my board this way and the other, and they blend together. It's almost like pouring the paint, right? So a natural hair brush, flat brush, is ideal for a good, like a pristine flat wash. I can do this 3-4 layers in different colors, beautiful. I will actually demonstrate later another layer and one of those, let's see here, for example, depends what you want. If you want a flat wash, easy enough, this one, no problem, one puddle of color. What do I do? Is I have these little containers from the dollar store, 3 for $1. I can close when I'm finished. I was using this one 2 days ago for a workshop. I can use it today again because doesn't have dog hair, hopefully. This fits perfectly. This brush fits right there, perfect, okay? If I try to do it in little puddles in the palette here, I'm probably going to run out of paint. So you need the equipment to do certain things. If you do small little paintings, no big deal. But if you're doing paintings of 1/4 sheet or bigger, you need definitely your big brushes, okay? So let's say that I wanted to paint this other background instead. This is more like a variegated, it has pinks and, believe it or not, this is these two colors, phthalo green and the quinacridone rose. That's my favorite mix for grays. Believe it or not, yes, I'm gonna put it like this so you can see better. Okay, that's the phthalo green from Da Vinci, and that's the quinacridone rose by Daniel Smith. You might have Permanent Rose by Winsor Newton, perfectly fine. You might have from Da Vinci, any of the rose. Most rose colors are fine. The only thing is, please do not use the opera color, because opera is definitely fugitive, meaning it's going to fade away. If you put your paint on the wall and the sun hits on it, it will be gone in 1 year, 6 months, I don't know exactly. So it's better to invest in some permanent pink. And actually, Winsor Newton Permanent Rose is not as permanent as quinacridone. Quinacridones are more permanent, okay? So how did I do this background? Very simple. I mixed a nice puddle of those two colors together, and then I mixed a little puddle of the pink and a little puddle of the green. I painted with my pink, with my gray mix, right? With the mix of both of them together, and then I drop some of the pink in there. I'm going to demonstrate that for you now, so you guys get to see how I do that, okay? 1 second. I have one painting somewhere I can use. This one. Let's put this here, and you're gonna see. There's other mixes of grays that I do. Let's say for cloths, I don't use this mix of pink and green because they are permanent, and then I will not be able to lift highlights. For painting white cloth, I will use my cobalt blue mixed with a little bit of the quinacridone burnt orange in a tiny bit of the quinacridone rose, and that gives me a beautiful gray. I thought I had that chart here, but I guess I left it on the other table. 1 second. Okay. So let's say that I want to paint this background. I will make a big puddle of it, but since we have a small project here, well, somewhere. Okay, so let's say I have a, where I mix it here.
Lana, I have a question.
Yes.
Is your image, did you put Misket on that to block it out?
Yes. Okay, so I have 2 different masking fluids I rely on. Winsor Newton, obviously, and the PBO drawing gum. Okay. What happens though with PBO is that depending on what paper do you use, you might get in trouble because if it's cheap paper, it might stick to the paper, it will be hard to remove. But for arches, Fabriano is wonderful because it lifts usually very nicely and is thinner in consistency than Winsor Newton. So it dries much faster, which is an advantage. And usually comes all in once, but I'm very curious to know if this one will come all at once because I use a different tape than usual. My usual one is my black tape, which I know how it works and I know how to rely on it, you know. But this tape is a new one, and I don't know if this is gonna lift nicely. So we'll see how it works. But anyway, so depending on the project, I use one or the other. What was the question? And so I thought
you answered the question.
Okay, I thought you were asking something else. Okay, yes.
Okay.
So that's the masking fluid. Okay, so now you see here that the tape has also masking fluid around the tape here, there, everywhere, like a song. What happens here is the tape, if it's not good, is going to buckle when you get it wet with some color that fell in it. So then the paint might go in those little nooks, you know, all the edges of the tape. So what I do is when I cover my subject with tape to protect it, I also seal all the edges of every piece of tape with the masking fluid. So no paint can go under.
What tape do you use?
This is a new one that I just got because I'm testing different tapes. See, look, it doesn't even have a name. It was a
Yeah, just meant.
one. But the other one, I will send you the link for it. Is because it's also a generic brand. It's called Pro Premium pH Neutral Masking. But if you write that down and you try to go to Amazon, you might get a completely different tape. So I need to send you the link of exact image because me too. Every time I don't do it that way, I can find it. It's impossible. But it's a nice, very good tape that it sticks well to the paper, but I can leave it weeks. And when I remove it, there's no gummy residue left behind.
Good.
So I adore it. It's just I don't know what happened a couple years ago, was almost none left to be found, and I was panicking. So now it's easy to find again, okay? So yeah, so it's called Pro Premium pH Neutral Masking. Or Masking Pro Premium, who knows, pH neutral. It's hard to tell, it goes in a loop. Okay, it's a good tape. Okay, so let's say that I am going to mix these colors here. I have my pink. I'm going to have a puddle of my pink here, kind of creamy. I'm gonna show you in a second what it looks like. I want it to be slightly creamy. Because everybody do their coffees in a different way, I cannot say, oh, it's like coffee and milk. Well, your coffee and milk might be creamier than my coffee and milk. So to me, I don't think it's a very valid comparison. But okay, so I have that pink. I'm going to now mix some of the green here too. So I have two puddles. One, going for it. So now, I'm sorry the ones you don't see my palette, but I have a puddle of green. And now I'm gonna show you what the pink looks like. Okay, so I have one puddle with the green, one puddle with the pink. They seem to be more or less the same kind of intensity. You could go a little bit stronger with the pink though, because the green goes crazy strong. So now I'm going to mix them together in a puddle. I start with the pink. So I'm gonna have three puddles. One of each color and one with both colors mixed in.
What kind of paper are you using?
I'm using Arches 140 pounds cold press. Okay, so that's gonna be this, and I'm gonna add a little tiny bit of the green because it tints really quickly. Whoops, it went very quick. And now look at this. I put a little bit of the green, and look what happened already. I'm gonna put a little bit more. And it's gonna turn little by little, it's gonna turn more neutral, okay? More, a little bit at a time. More. And then we'll start going more greenish. You know, it depends on the bias. Let's see, a little bit more. Anyway, so I have already a color here that is almost neutral gray, okay? Just by mixing both colors. So now I'm gonna try to keep it on the line there, okay? I'm going to switch now to my larger brush. Now, you have two options. If it's a large, like I said before, if it's a large painting and you don't have the right brush, you can get it wet first with whatever brush you have with clean water, and then you're gonna drop the color on top. But let's say that you have, you know, if I wanted to, I could do this right now with this brush and be done in no time. But I'm gonna do the difficult way for in case you don't have those brushes. I'm gonna use clean water, and I'm going to okay, the tape is pressed down really nice and tight against my pencil line so it doesn't lift. Now I can go right on it, go all over here. And I can go in sections. Let's say you have a very complicated painting with many in and outs. You might be better off working in sections because if you get it wet first over here, you go work this way, this way, this way. Sometimes By the time you reach here, this is dry already. So either you put a lot of water and keep an eye on it, or you just work in sections, okay? So let's pretend that we're gonna do the whole thing all at once. You go quickly, because the more time you take getting the paper wet, the more it's gonna start buckling before you start putting the paint in there. So there's no reason to go slowly when you have everything protected. So it's just go fast. Just take a look at your paper to make sure you did not forget a spot. I see now I'm tilting my board and I can see where I missed the spots, and I'm picking up the excess. Okay, here we go again. Okay, so now I want to see if you guys can see the shine. Okay, you can see the shine. Let's say that you got a lot of puddles here. What you want to do is you're going to have some nice paper towels that you had already pre-cut in squares, and you're going to tip your board, and let's say it's puddling over here. You will pick up the excess from the edge of your paper. Now, why do I have my tape around it? Because I can actually, first thing, I like to have a white edge around all my paintings when they're finished. And second, because that helps me to control where the excess paint goes, and it's easy for me to pick it up right at the edge. So I usually end up with nicer, more flat, even backgrounds. If I don't tape it down, the paper is going to start buckling like crazy, and you will not have an even background. You'll have puddles of paint, which will give you more chance of, you know, having blooms. So if you don't want to have blooms, make sure you tape your paper nice and you know, nice to the board, and you minimize that chance of having blooms. So it's nice and wet, and I see the shine. See, there's no puddles, nice and shiny. I'm gonna start with the gray that I created. Now, it's been sitting there now for 2 or 3 minutes. What happens? The heavier pigment goes to the bottom, and you end up taking only the top if you don't stir this. So I always stir well before I start again. Now I'm going to start in one corner. If you start in the middle, you have to run from one place to the other. So you always start in one of the corners. Barely touching, I let the paint spread by itself, basically, okay? As you can see, I'm tipping my board. It's not flat, I'm tipping it up, almost vertical, okay? And I'm letting it, what's it, there? I'm barely touching the paper with the tip of my brush. I'm touching the water. I'm not touching the paper. Look at it. You don't hear any sounds. You don't hear ha, ha, ha. You don't hear it because I'm just touching the water surface, okay? I'm not painting really with the paper here, because I'm actually just touching the water. So now, what we have to look for now is where it accumulates. That's what's gonna give you blooms if you don't remove those accumulations, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm gonna rinse my brush, tap, dry it a little bit. I have always some paper towels here to blot my brush. And now I'm gonna get a smaller brush. This was a size 14, but I'm going now down to a size 8. And what I'm going to do is what I did before too. I'm gonna tip my board first and pick up the excess from the sides. I'm gonna pick up from here too. If it's a lot of it coming this way, go into the paper. Don't just undo the tape. Go right onto the watercolor paper. Now I see some guys over there that are puddling. So what I do is I take my paper towel and I dip the corner on those little puddles. That way I don't disturb the wash of the paper. I minimize the contact with the paper, okay? So if you have big puddles on top of your masking fluid, also try to remove it, because otherwise if you go like this and if something pile up on top of your masking fluid, it's going to run into your paper. Now, This is still nice and moist. See how it's shiny? That means I can still work on it. So I
Is
can
there
go,
masking fluid over those green flowers?
yeah, that's what it is. All the green that you see is the masking fluid.
Okay.
Is the PBO brand. It's actually like a beautiful blue green. So now I have this other brush, right? Get it wet, dry a little, and I'm going to see, okay, it came out a little in the pinkish purple. So let's say I want to have more pink on it. I go and stir my pink that I created before, this pink that I created, loaded my brush almost to the dripping point, and I say, let's have some more pink in this area. And barely touching the paper again, I can drop the pink, barely touching the paper, let it slide, let it move, and then I can go maybe with my green. And without even rinsing my brush, I just go into the green puddle that I had from before. And I might go here and drop some of the green. Okay, so I'm trying to make sure you all guys see this, so I'm trying to stay within those pencil lines I created. I can go back maybe to the pink, and I can go maybe to the green over here. So if you want a variegated one, you would do it this way, okay? It's just alternating the colors. And they don't have to be perfectly clean. So that's why I don't rinse in between. Since they are both already in there mixed, I don't mind. Just a second. Let's say I want to have, look at this, see how beautiful variegation we're getting there? I can get maybe more of the pink here, and maybe more of the green there. More here. So anyway, so you get the idea. If I wanted to create a beautiful, variegated, slightly colorful, pinkish, gray color, I would do this and let them mingle. And you're gonna end up with this gorgeous almost neutral gray, but colorful gray. So see, I'm moving it and moving it. They're blended by themselves. I'm not using the brush. Let's say that here needs a little more green. I'll just get a little more green here. Let it dry enough. So now you find yourself with a lot of liquid. At this point, you might get blooms. No, excuse me, not blooms. Your paper might be buckling. Sorry, I have to do this. So before it starts buckling, you have to remove first the excess. Right now, see, I don't want any more to tip over. I already have that. What I want to do is pick up first the excess from the sides. And then I will, again, use the tip of my paper towel to pick up the excess from the top of the masking fluid, so it doesn't run wild when I tip it again. Okay, so now doesn't seem to have puddles, but it's accumulating slightly more over here. I can use the other tip and pick up the excess there a little bit. Any excess there. Okay, so now this one now. If I wanted to keep it like this beautiful color like this, I will use the hair dryer right now and let it dry. But let's say that you still want darker color, that you say, oh my gosh, well, you know what? I was thinking maybe I should use a darker color. You can still at this point add another darker color. And I actually have here, you can add other color like blue. Let's say you can use the cobalt blue or any color that seems to, it could look nice in here. You can use the green even thicker, creamier to make it more intense, or you can mix your pink even thicker and creamier with more paint and still drop it there, and it should be fine. And you will have more colorful background. But the important part is that whatever color you add now here, it has to be creamy in consistency. If you make a washy color, these are still very kind of watery. And those two colors I've been mixing, all three colors are very watery. If I put them now over here, they're gonna create blooms because they're too watery and it's starting to dry. If you want to just increase the, let's say the intensity of the color, you have to make them very creamy. I'm going to show you. If I want to make the pink more intense in here, I'm going to get more paint into my puddle, make it much creamier. Okay, so see how sluggish it moves? I'm gonna put it here so you at least can see. See how it moves very sluggish? That's creamier. I'm gonna show you here on the paper. It's a little more intense than the one I had before, right? So now that's the next thing. You need to make sure your paper is still damp and shiny before you put anything on it. This is still nice and shiny, okay? But it's starting to get drier here. I don't see any shine on the bottom. If I try to put it here, even though it's thicky, it's gonna create a bloom. I can put this anywhere else and it will be just fine. Look, if I put it here, it will blend and mix beautifully with the rest, no problem. Perfect.
If it is starting to dry, can you add some more water to it, or is it going to start to then make stains?
It's going to start getting the blooms. You're gonna see, I'm gonna show you now. So, but let's pretend in this section that's starting to dry that I want to add more color. I'm going to try to get now a color that, let's say I want to make some yellow. And I make a little puddle of yellow here. And it's kind of watery. Okay? And I go here. You're gonna see what's gonna happen in 2 seconds flat. Look, bloom starting to form. Look at the bloom growing and growing and growing. Can you guys see everybody this screen? Can you guys see this?
Yes.
See, why? Because it was watery. If it's watery, it's gonna spread like crazy. But in a painting like this, you can use it to your advantage. Little tiny droplets will make smaller blooms. Bigger droplets with a bigger brush will make bigger blooms. But look at this. Depending on how dry the paper was, the bloom gets bigger. Where the paper was still wet, they're not spreading as much. Funny thing, right? So look at this beautiful effects. So in my last workshop I just finished 2 days ago, we did that. We purposely did blooms on the background because the background was supposed to be, well, it was for the same painting, supposed to be variegated greens and blues in the background. So I purposely at this stage dropped yellows and the greens and blues separated, and it was fascinating to see. So I can do the same with the pink. Instead of putting the pink very thick, I can use the pink very watery, and I will do the same thing. Or just simply water. I mean, you don't have to put color in it. I put color to make it more interesting. But see, the blooms, the shapes of those beautiful tendrils only happen where the paper is quite dry. If it's very wet, all it's gonna do is make it kind of disperse more. So here I'm gonna make a bloom right there. Look, I'm gonna make a beautiful bloom here because it's half dry already here. Okay, so sometimes blooms help a painting to look very interesting. You might want to create it, but you have to know when. I'm gonna show you again here the stages of wetness. Okay, see, all this is still wet. This was drying, see there's no shining here, so it's creating those beautiful tendrils. This was dry here, it's creating those tendrils. See, the paper is very dry down here, so it's creating that hard edge. Here was still slightly damp, so it's still growing in there, okay? So yeah, so backgrounds can be a lot of fun. And now you ask me probably, well, let's say that happens to me and I want to fix it. I will say, leave it, let it dry completely, and then after it dries, you are going to fiddle with it. So what I'm going to do now with this one is I'm going to dry quickly with a hair dryer. Well, 2. I use 2 hair dryers. and I'm going to let it set, okay? Then later when I come back to it, I'll fix this for you guys, okay? So you can see how I do it, okay? So let me dry this quickly so it doesn't continue. See, if I don't use the hair dryer now, these are gonna keep going and going and going, and they're gonna spread the strings. I like the way they look now. Well, this one is boring, so I'm gonna add some yellow there. This one. There you go, and I'm gonna put some yellow here too. I'm gonna let them air dry instead of using the hair dryer. So I'm gonna put this aside, okay? And I'm gonna show you something different. So yeah, so that one, if I have, you know, I didn't use any blooms for this one. Okay, so you can see this way. I didn't use any blooms for that one, obviously. I just let it, I took my hair dryer and went like crazy until it dried completely flat. Now, what else I want to show you? I want to show you the steps. Let's see if we can figure out how to show it to all of you at the same time. I have my tablet here. Oops, wait 1 second. Okay, now. These, oh, you guys see, I see very blue on the screen. Yeah, I see very blue on the screen. Okay, this was the original photo for that painting. I want to show you, though, how it went. 1 second. What was the process? Oh. Up here. So, can you all see this? I can get a little higher.
Can you move, Lena, can you move it towards the other side where the glass is just a little bit? Okay.
Oh, yeah, whichever place you want me to. It's just, I was thinking of those people that can see.
Oh, I can't see it then. Yeah.
Okay.
How does that happen? I just tried on my iPad and I saw everything that I see on my computer.
Because there's a bar, a black bar on the bottom of my iPad, and it just doesn't go away.
Can you go up higher a little bit, Lena?
Sure. I can just lower
No,
this.
no, no. Just move it up on your
Okay.
table. Move
Okay.
it up a little.
Yeah,
No,
like, yeah.
to the top. Like.
Oh, to the top. Okay, yeah. But I want you guys to
Oh,
get,
cut it off more. It was,
if
it was
I
good
go
where
up
it
here like this, you guys see the whole image?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So let's do it this way.
Okay.
So this was this project that I just showed you. It was all, you know, masked properly. The difficult part is the more things you have with in and outs, the harder it is to actually make an even pristine background because the paint pools in those sections, but it's nothing you can do much. First layer, the green on top.
Yeah.
See how it does interesting things? I
Yes.
mean, I could do it this way, leave it like this, or I can keep going. Another layer of pink on top. Now
Nice.
a layer of, on top of what we had already, is a layer of the indanthrone blue. I'm gonna show you in a second what indanthrone blue is. I don't want to put my head down now. So in a minute. Then on top of that, after it dried too, I put a layer of perylene maroon. All those are colors from Daniel Smith. And I explain to you in a second what happens with that. The
Look at
light
that.
pigmentation was not good, but anyway, so it gives you that sequence of layers, gives you this beautiful dark chocolate color and pristine because, like I say, the indanthrone blue kind of covers nicely mistakes. And the perylene maroon, it has such an interesting quality. Not only covers the mistakes, in top of it, it looks like a velvety finish. It doesn't look pasty. It just looks velvety. And it's just gorgeous. And funny thing is, when it dries, at first it looks very brown, but overnight, it turns the whole painting much darker. So in my photos, it looks like a black color, which is not, okay? Anyway, so that's that. Okay, so now, how do I go to the next step? once my background is dry, I start with the first layers, the lightest layers you can find in any object in your painting. Let's say I'm right-handed, I'm gonna start on my left side, and I just started, I put a gray undercoat to the handle because lately I've been having trouble getting dark browns that don't look gummy or pasty. In the old days, I used to use burnt umber, but I don't use that anymore. I only use the either burnt sienna deep by Da Vinci, which I'm gonna show you in a second, which I love. And I'll tell you now why I use that one, or the quinacridone burnt orange. The difference between these two guys is important. This one is extremely transparent, very staining. I use it for all my undercoats to stain the paper to make sure it doesn't move later. I can paint on top and it's perfect. This one is easier to remove after you paint with it. It might granulate a little bit more too, but that's why I like this one when I mix my grays for painting a white cloth, for example, because usually I like to raise highlights. I rely on putting paint down, letting things dry, and then I remove highlights and lift color here and there to get the result I want. So this is perfect for that, for cloths, for example. But this is perfect for these pots, for example, or for sometimes a background or something that needs a staining color, okay? Very transparent, beautiful color. So for these pots, I actually use this one the whole time, even though, like I say, I had trouble with the darkest browns because it's very transparent, so it never goes very dark. So it doesn't matter what you mix it with, it just doesn't seem to get dark enough. So in that case, I use this one. And I mix it with ultramarine blue, and I get a very nice dark brown. Or I mix it with the Indian from blue, or any of those blues that you might have, the Prussian blue, any of those dark blues that you might have. Okay, so transparent, staining, not transparent, liftable. Okay.
What color is the Da Vinci again, please?
It's a burnt sienna deep, and that's the other difference. I want to tell you what's the other difference to here. This one is, I'm gonna see in a second, is a beautiful burnt sienna, like you see, very similar to this one, but, oh, is the chart. Okay, here we have the chart. Quinacridone gold, burnt sienna regular from Core, I didn't like it, it's boring looking. Burnt sienna deep by Da Vinci, nice and reddish, beautiful. Burnt sienna by Winsor Newton, quinacridone burnt orange by Daniel Smith. So they look the same, right? What happens in these two, the Winsor Newton and the Daniel Smith, they have like a yellow undertone to them. So when you mix them with the cobalt blue, it looks like a greenish gray because it has so much yellow on it. But this one, burnt sienna deep, it has more red. So when you mix it with blue, it doesn't turn the gray greenish. So I like it because it gives me a very natural gray, okay? That's why I like it. But there's also solutions for everything. I'll show you in a second. Let's say that I want to mix my burnt sienna or my quinacridone burnt orange let's say we want to mix it with my cobalt blue. I go for it, and I go for it, and I go until I see that they have almost a neutral color. Yeah, see, it's slightly greenish, that gray, compared to that, right? Easy solution. I'm gonna clean my brush, and I'm gonna go for a little bit of the pink. If I put a little bit of the pink, think about it. If this is yellow, wish, and you put a little pink, it turns orangey, right? So orange and blue, neutral. So if you get a greenish gray, just add a little bit of pink. Oops, and I went a little too pink back. I mean, it's, you can neutralize that better by adding, see, it's more neutral now than before, okay? So there's solutions for every problem, but that's why I like to use this one, because I only have to use this with the cobalt blue, boop, instant. I have my perfect gray, okay? But hot flash, oh, I have the heat on, 1 second. I forgot I had the heat on. Okay, let's take this off. The fan. Whew.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm from Spain, and I have
I know. I love it. It's beautiful.
I have flashes for 11 years now, so I know how to cope with them. And a little water.
Good for you.
Okay. So now, I'm going to keep showing just for a second before I start painting. Again, showing you the steps. So why did I put the gray there first? It was because I was trying to accelerate the process. Say, okay, if I put the gray first and then I put the brown on top, it will become darker brown. And it did, but not dark enough. I find that the quinacridone burnt orange gets gummy when you put it thick. So it was just making shiny. It was not right. I'd rather use the regular sienna for it, okay? Anyway, so next step, I had that layer that I was telling you about on top of the gray. Look, we just color it beautifully. And I started doing, let's say, the mid values in some areas. I even started some of the darkest browns so I could compare and see how dark I need to go here, okay? So I did all the dark values and go up here, darker values on the spout so I could compare and see, okay, now what do I have to do here? As you can see, I was very smart. I just started testing my colors on the smaller areas. That way, if I make a boo-boo, it's easy to kind of more or less disguise. If I start painting on the large areas, which are the hardest one to paint, then I'm in trouble because then I mess up the whole painting. After all the work I put into it, it will be, you know, a disaster. So let me show you the painting again here. 1 sec.
Lana, when
Yes.
you start putting your darker color on the light, are you wetting your paper ahead of time in that one?
Yes. I'm going to demonstrate that in a few minutes. You're going to see that, yes, I do. For this kind of, for large areas like this, yes. For small areas, sometimes not necessary because then what happens is the paint goes all over the place and you lose your,
Dark.
you know, your destination basically. So for small areas, I might paint first and then soften the edges with a little bit of water. But for the larger areas, yes, I will put the water down first and then put the rich creamy color and let it spread by moving my paper in the right directions or guiding it with my brush a little bit. So yes, I'm going to demonstrate that. Good question, good question. Okay. So let me just show you quickly the rest of the process here, and then I'm going to start painting, okay? So next one, yeah, you can see I keep adding, see, first layer for the bottom area. Now I go, next one, boom, add more color, exactly. Wet on wet. I put the water first, and I drop very rich, creamy color in those areas, and let it spread, control with my brush, and dry. So yes, you can see I keep adding layers and layers to it. Okay, so more or less you see now. See, that one, the pot, is the most difficult one to do. First layer, then by section, because when I looked at the photos in my painting, I could see, or the photos I have, the reference photos, I could see that it had a lot of different colors into it. Reds, green, yellows, muted like mustard colors. And also, of course, I myself, I added a few to make it more vivid too. But definitely changes from one image Look at the next one. It's already changing, another layer. So that's not layer number 3. Let's see, next one. Layer number 4 in the pot. Okay, and then, and probably this number 5. So it's many layers on each one of the pots, depending on what they have. Let me then start painting so you guys get to see how I work. I think I have more or less everything here.
I have another question. I noticed at the top of the handle on the big pot,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you see the highlights.
Yes.
But when you had your first color down, you didn't see the highlights. So were they masked or?
No. Okay, so now what happens here, I'm gonna show you. This is where I rely. This is my most important tool, right? This one. And also the important tool is knowing my colors, what they're going to do. For example, remember where I was talking about the staining colors first, and then the other colors that are a little thicker on top. Why do I say that? This is not pure white. I put here a little white highlight later, but actually it's not pure white, okay? It's not. That's a scrub afterwards. The only thing I reserved that I didn't paint was that thing, and actually I kind of missed put a little white later on top. But the only things that were masked were a couple little spots here on the handle, tiny bit here and there. Here, I only masked actually that little spot and that little spot. The rest was none. And if I go like this now, you see that it's not pure white. That's the first layer that we had here. 1 second. So we basically went to, 1 second, to this color, more or less. Because after we put more layers on top, those layers, the last layers, they sit on top of this. They don't go into the paper anymore. So they're very easy to remove. So let's say I have 5 layers. The first layer goes in. Second layer, if it's a transparent color, staining color might go into. The third layer sits on top of the first 2. The fourth layer on top, the fifth layer on top. So it's very easy to remove. Let's see if I have some painting here. Let's say these guys. Okay, this is the chart for these colors. Let's say, see, this is the staining colors. Then I put some more browns on top, different layers. You're gonna see now how it's easy to remove, to go back to the first color. There you go, highlight, okay? So that's the same theory here. All those are just left afterwards. This brush I'm using here is just a cheap Joe's white nylon, inexpensive one, you know. It's the one I use for mixing and for lifting highlights in certain areas. I also have others of many different kinds, including oil brushes that I trim to make them more, you know, so they're not spread out. There are others, let's say Creative Mark makes scrubbers. They're very harsh, so I don't use them that much. But this other brand from Cheap Joe's, Fritz Scrubber, I like because they're harsh also too, but they're a little more gentle to the paper. This particular size, number 2 of Cheap Joe's Fritz Scrubber, is the one I use probably the most. Next to this one. This one is not a scrubber per se. This one is actually a Princeton Select Filbert Grainer, meaning it had a size of this, it had a few more hairs sticking out like this. I guess to do grass or something like that. But I wanted it because it's very thin. If you see sideways, it's extremely thin. Flat and then thin, look at this. So I can scrub little lines with it anywhere. And it's stiff enough, but soft enough that's not going to damage the paper much. So this is the kind of things you can actually do yourself by going to dollar stores and other places where they sell cheap brushes, you can create your own scrubbers. This was a cheap, look at this, cheap little brush. I cut off some of it, trim the X on the top, and I have a beautiful scrubber. Let me see what you can see it here. That I can use for many different areas, okay? So you don't need to spend a fortune in buying these guys when you can go to a dollar store and, you know, trim yourself one to the right shape, okay? Any other questions regarding the scrubbing before I keep going? Because I
Oh,
have
that's good.
So what I was talking about is these guys. Okay, when I have my reference photo, where I look in my reference photo is for, just a second, before I start painting, I start looking with these guys for the colors. Let's say I'm painting this pot now, and I want to paint, and I'm painting this pot over here too. I want to make sure the values are correct. So I use these little guys to let me know if I'm going in the right direction, okay? I want to see, okay, that color looks like a mustardy color. Okay, mustard. What about this section? Well, it looks more like a reddish brown, very dark reddish brown. Okay, good. Well, let's go that way. Good. How about this section? What color is that? So I basically isolate with this sections of the reference photo. So I know exactly what I need to paint here. Because at first glance, you say, oh, it's just some kind of yellow and red pot. But yeah, it needs to change. It's complex. It's a very complex. And you can see how it goes from reddish dark to reddish lighter and lighter and lighter, okay? And then goes darker again towards the corner. So to me, this is the most important thing I can do in my painting, is studying beforehand all the colors and values in the object I want to paint, okay? So with that under the belt, I think we can go and start painting a little bit of that pot. I'll take this out of the way. Any other questions before I start painting? Okay, so now I have, let me just get rid of all this mess in here on my table. And before I actually go, I'm gonna show you here another example. Another thing too, if you plan to paint some copper, I have another example here. This was the first copper painting I did for as a workshop for some of my students at the Walker River School. And it was a simple pot, but it wasn't that simple, because look at all the different designs that were in it. It was just like crazy. It was hard to identify what was in there. So I said, I don't care. So I did what I could similar, and it looks realistic enough. So I'm happy with that. But it's the same process. Light colors first layer of the very light color. That's the one is going to sink on the paper. That's the one that's going to show up in my highlights later. Medium values already, some wet on wet in some areas, some designs, some of the darkest darks already in there in place. So I can decide what my need values should be. Just keep working and working until you get to the right place. But I also always keep in mind that photo next to me, so I can compare constantly. I don't know about you, but my eyesight is horrible and I don't see very well. So I rely on taking photos of each stage of my painting. I put them on the computer, and in the screen of my computer, I can see better what it needs to be done. When I'm too close to my painting, I really can't see it. It's hard for me to tell. I can't see up close. So it's better for me to look back from the distance. It's like more objective. I don't have to, it's like it's not my painting anymore. So I can look and say, that area where there's too light, over there should go a little darker. And if I put both photos, my photo of let's say this photo, next to my reference photo in the screen, I can see exactly how much darker I need to go with the bottom. To say, oh, look at that, I need to go so much darker. So it really helps me when I put them in the computer to compare, okay? But anyway, so if you're going to be painting copper, I recommend that you choose first one subject that is easy enough. Why do I say that? Look at this other photo. I took this photo, there's the same pot at the Walker River School, but see, it's more confusing. All these shapes, that dark shadow here, it will not look right. It will look strange. So you have to take many photos to find the right composition, to find the right interesting subject, because it might look okay in a photo, but then it does not translate well to watercolor later. So this shadow here will have look ugly, all that black section there, okay? So take many, many photos, several different days, different times of the day with different light coming through the windows. I always recommend windows if possible. And then you'll be able to choose an interesting subject, hopefully, right? Okay, let's see how this goes before, look at the nice little blooms in there, okay? But like I said, yes, we can correct that. So let this dry completely. Look, the board is kind of buckled because it's like, it's a piece of mud board, okay? For a little project, mud board is all I need. But for my larger project, no, larger, for the quarter size, I use panels, the canvas panels. So, okay, let's go with this. Based on the photos I showed you, you can see that my first colors are going to be these. These are, okay, can you, everybody see? That is the quinacridone gold mixed with the quinacridone burnt orange, okay? And later on, I add a little bit of perylene maroon. How do you spell perylene maroon? I'll do it here for you. 1 second, because I know you guys are going to ask me. Perylene maroon, or maroon de perylene, depending which brand you look at. You have maroon de perylene or perylene maroon, okay? Mine is Winsor Newton, and I recommend, oh, excuse me, no. Daniel Smith. And I tested 3 different brands, and I like the Daniel Smith the best. Why? Because it stays put, it doesn't move as much as the others. The others lift too easily, okay? So for my purposes, is the best brand. The other color that you probably said, what did she say? The Indanthrone blue. That's the other color that is not that usual. Indanthrone, like a throne. And some places they call it Indanthrene with an E, okay? Indanthrone blue. And Indanthrone blue is a beautiful color that is very dark and rich. I'll show you in a second. Well, do you see it? Do you have time to copy? Indanthrone blue, perylene maroon. So the Indanthrone blue, let's see, darkens every brown beautifully, and that's why I use it. Let me clean this up in a second. It's a dark, rich color, and it dries a little lighter, yes. Well, what can we say? But see, it's a nice, it's not as transparent as ultramarine blue, doesn't granulate too much, and which is what I need for this kind of thing sometimes. And it's more of a slightly neutralized blue, so it's not as vivid as a, like a, what do you call it again? Ultramarine blue. And it has a deeper value, meaning this probably is a value 8 or 9. You can reach a value 8 or 9 with this color, while with cobalt, you can only reach a value 6.5, I think 7 tops. So if you want a darker blue, that's a good color to have. But again, always is a but. I only use it for darkening things. Let's say to darken some greens, beautiful. You know, you add to some sap green, beautiful dark green. You add it to some brown, beautiful. But for my backgrounds, but to do my white cloths, no, it's just too, I don't know, too opaque. It's not opaque, but it's just too opaque for what I want. For that, I use the cobalt blue, okay? Okay, so let's do this. First layer, as I was showing you here. Let me find them again. So you can see first layer. 1 second. Second. Okay. My first layer. Here we go. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this with a mix of the quinacridone gold and the quinacridone burnt orange. But obviously, I have to think of reserving the highlight here. So I'm going to use water first. I'm going to put the water where I want it, and then I'm going to drop those colors on it, okay? But first, I want to mix my colors. That's the important thing. Always mix your colors ahead of time. Don't wait until your paper is wet, because then it's going to dry. Okay, so let me just clean things here so I can see better what we're doing. What time is it? Oh, wow. I don't have much time. Okay, so, but you've been learning things, right? You haven't seen me painting much, but you have been learning. Okay, there we go. Okay, based on what I showed you before, you know that creamy goes well over wet, right? Doesn't spread too much. So I want some creamy one for the darkest areas. I also want a nice puddle of the yellow, because that's the most important one right now. That's the one that is going to be the vehicle for the brown. That gold quinacridone looks very brown on the pot here, but then once you put it on a puddle, even though it looks very, very yellow, it's not as yellow when it dries, okay? But it looks, I know, very intense here on the puddle, but it's not going to be as intense when we put it on the paper. Think about it. We're gonna put water. That's gonna dilute the color. It's gonna dry lighter. So whatever you see here on this paper, it's gonna be almost half by the time it's dry, okay? So don't worry if it looks too yellow at first, no worries. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now this one I have the thick paint, and I want to have also a little bit of just also a little more watery brown, because we're going to use it also for the I'm going to start with yellow, right? And I'm going to actually drop this other one, this medium value brown on it. But later, actually, I'm going to drop some of the darker one on this section. So I have two puddles here. I'll show you. The lighter one and the creamier one, okay? Can you see? So I'm going to now localize, find where the highlight is. Now, I look at this here, and I see that the white area is here. And all around that white area is kind of yellowish, is pale color. And as it goes farther and farther, it becomes darker and darker. These little highlights here were done later. Like I said before, scrub them off at the end. The only ones I saved here was this one and this one, a little one here, a little bit one there, something there, and there. Just a few little touches, okay? Everything else is not pure white. So there's no reason to save anything with masking fluid but those areas. These, you don't even need to put masking fluid on it. Just simply do a pencil line. Well, this doesn't match with that one. I know it's somewhere here. They're not exactly the same painting. It's somewhere here with a pencil. I'm gonna make it a little darker so you can see it. That's where my highlight is going to be, right? I'm gonna erase it because I don't want to touch that with my water. But let's say that you do that. What you can do is, I wanna show you in a different, here. When I mark a section to make sure I don't paint on it, let's say this is a round highlight, and I don't want to, you know, I want to make sure I don't paint over the pencil line, because you know that the pencil line will become permanent and will show a circle there. What I do is I kind of erase until I see only little dots. Okay, that will show less. If I happen to go over by mistake with my water, it will not show as much. It still will show where I need to be. Okay, so don't ever go over your pencil lines where is supposed to be a highlight. So here we go, the little pencil lines. I see more or less what it is. And I'm going to go now with clean water and a brush of the appropriate size for it. What do I mean with that? If I go with a too small brush, I'm gonna be scrubbing, scrubbing, scrubbing. And eventually, the more I scrub this paper, the more I disturb it, the more kind of grainy it's gonna look later. So I always avoid scrubbing the paper too many times. One pass, two passes, and that's it, okay? That way you see that my paintings look very kind of clean and very smooth, because I rely on gravity to move the paint, and because I do not scrub and scrub and scrub, okay? So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start putting water near, not by the pencil line, near the pencil line, around in a circle. So I'm like 1/8 of an inch away from the pencil line. I'm going to paint all that section up to the lid. I'm going to leave the lid as an independent entity. That's completely different. I'm going to focus only in one section at a time. Now that I have the circles, if you can see the circle around there with the water, there you go. Then I'm going to go this way with the clean water. Very gentle. I don't scrub. I use just, look how the tip of my brush is barely touching the paper. I'm not pushing down, okay? And I'm stopping at that pencil line here, because that is like a different entity too, I call it. Different, that's different, that's different, that's different. So it helps me to do in sections, okay? So I stay in between the lines. It's a good thing, okay? Now, okay, so I have all this water. I see now I'm looking back from here. I don't see any puddles. I don't see any major, this is drying already a little, so I'm going to go again until it's shiny again. And now that I have this, let me see, there you go. You see the shine is a very, no puddles, doesn't drip, just shiny. I'm going to go to my yellow. I'm stirring again, so that it's well mixed. And I'm going to tip this board towards me, up in the air towards me. So I'm gonna let the paint run downwards from that. Okay, I'm not gonna start at the very edge of the water. I'm gonna start a little farther down from the edge of the water, if I can, which I couldn't. And I'm gonna let it run down. I'm gonna let it run down, add more paint, very gentle, very gentle. If I want to now at this point, I could actually introduce the mid-value of the burnt orange and let them blend together already. Okay, by the time I reach this here, I can put it flat again. Let's see if you can see. Finish painting this section. And now I can actually control this a little bit by saying, okay, where do I need to go with this? This is lighter, this darker, that's darker too. So I can lead my brush still slightly down with paint. I can bring it that way. I can bring it this way. I'm just basically displacing the paint that's still on my brush here. And I'm going under here. That circle is around this way. This goes more or less here. Okay. That I will finish later independently probably, okay? because that needs to get wet too a little bit. I need to put a little clean water here and let it spread into the clean water. Okay. I can go get some of that darker. You want to do nice. I'm putting the darker now. The one that I make creamier, that I'm going to show you the ones that can see this. That's the creamier one. That's the mid value. The creamier one now, I can actually go here and drop it. Okay, can I drop it there? And I can actually make it go in that direction. Okay, a little bit more. And I'm barely touching, I'm basically touching the water, the moist. I'm not going deep into the paper. So just displacing, let me find a piece of paper so you can see better. It's almost like a dry brush kind of thing. Basically, you're touching the water and letting it spread into the water, okay? Very, very gentle. As you can see, wherever I didn't put the water, the paint didn't go, except for here that I went and did some stupid thing. But anyway, you can see now how we got a transition between both colors. Here, what happens though is, unfortunately, when I put it, this was too big a brush, and I got too close to the edge with the water. So I got a perfect circle. I don't want that. So I'm going to clean my brush, dry it, and I'm going to go into that and pick up the excess yellow. Pick up. Try not to touch the pencil lines. Pick up, pick up. And now before it gets any, it's gonna keep running. So I'm going to use the hair dryer to dry this for two different reasons. Because if I don't use the hair dryer now, this thing is gonna become maybe granulated, because if you let it settle by itself, it's gonna granulate a little. And also it's because I want to stop this from running and making a circle around the white. So I keep picking up, and I'm gonna use the hair dryer now. Okay, so this is still slightly wet over there, so I have to be careful. It still feels bumpy, so I cannot do the second layer until this is completely dry, okay? Until this is completely flat. So for that, I should keep going, drying it until it goes flat completely. But while this dries, that's the good thing about the beauty about this kind of painting. I can work in another area. I can work, since I have a dark line underneath this separating these two guys, I could work on the first layer for that. Or I could work on the first layer for this. So that's the good thing. You don't have to wait until it's completely dry and do all the layers. I prefer, that's the way I work, I prefer to get all the shapes in my painting mapped first. What do I mean with mapping is, I want to make sure my shapes are correct before I engage on, spending 6 hours in this spot, and then I realize that this spot was wrong. And then what? I throw it to the garbage. So to make sure that I don't waste my time, right away, I put the lightest value layer on each one of the objects. I'm talking about the pots. The cloth, it will be later. But that way I know that this pot is in the right position and maybe it's the right shape. You say, oh no, maybe this area looks more bumpy than the other. Because sometimes when you draw, it doesn't show the problems. It's only when you first put some paint on it when you see that there's a problem with it. So this one actually is slightly different. You notice here the distances are different. I corrected because this one I didn't like that. This was connecting like a continuous line. I thought this was a better composition. But exactly, once I painted this first background, I thought, oh no, I think I like better this other one. So I switched and started this one. Okay, so while this dries, I'm gonna show you how this masking fluid behaves. Let's see if we got any problems inside here. The people were attending my workshop the other day. They showed me already some of the problems they had. One lady had the tape here. The paint had gone through the tape, so she got several lines of color within the pot. We'll see if this masking fluid comes out. This paper had been there for a long time, and I believe it's the wrong side. I'm not sure. Let's see if it comes off. I had this for a long time there. Yeah, it's coming off nicely. Yeah, okay. Okay, good. And it preserved beautifully. Like I say, it was a thin layer, took less to dry than the Winsor & Newton. And it's so nice. It preserved beautifully the whites. But like I said, if you use cheap papers, this one might stick more to it or might stain a little. That bluish color might kind of stain a little the paper. It happened to me only once, and it was because I used the Arches extra white paper, and it was defective. 20 sheets of defective extra white paper. As you can imagine, I wasn't very happy at all. Completely useless. Completely useless. It sucked the paint. You couldn't lift anything. You couldn't spread anything. There were like fingerprints showing all over. It was ridiculous. It has areas of dark spots. Oh, it was terrible. And I tried another paper that was also extra white. I think it was Fabriano. And I found that also was hard to remove. Also the mistakes and things. It did not lift, the colors didn't lift as well with that one either. So in my experience, extra white paper sucks the paint and it doesn't release it as well, okay? In case you rely on lifting colors, like I do. So yeah, perfect, look at that. Yay, beautiful. So we have this cute.
Lana, what
Yes.
paper do you rely on then to use?
So now, all my life I've been painting with Arches 140 cold press, natural white, right? Natural white. But they've been going through these growing pains. When they got bought by Winsor & Newton, they changed the formula. So it's been several years now that you get unpredictable batches. Sometimes it works beautifully. Sometimes it's a little drier. But still, to me, it's the best paper. To me, it's the best. But I have to say that I tried recently Fabriano 300, because I'm supposed to send a painting to Fabriano. And I liked the 300 Fabriano cold press, natural, because it lets me lift beautifully. I was like, wow, very nice. So I liked it even better than the Arches 300 cold press. So it's all, yeah, it's such a, for me, it's a problem because my large paintings, my full sheets, they take me weeks and weeks to paint. And sometimes the drawing itself is already 8 hours to get the drawing done. So after 8 hours of drawing, and then I have to start all over again, it's a pain on the neck. If I see the paper not absorbing.
Guys, where you get Fabriano, I haven't seen that too much.
What was it again? Repeat the
Can
question.
you advise where your places to get Fabriano? Haven't seen it too much.
I know, that's why I had to buy the 300 because I couldn't find the 140.
Yeah.
Because of the COVID situation, it's been impossible to find. I have it now on in Cheap Joe's. I put a request, so whenever they get it, they'll send me some. I actually don't care that much about the Fabriano 140. I don't.
Can you get it overseas, maybe in the UK, sent to you faster?
Maybe, I guess you could. Yeah. This guy, Pierre Guidetti, I'm supposed to do some demo on Fabriano next month.
Right.
And he said he's going to send me some, but he has not sent me any yet. He's been 2 weeks already.
Yeah.
So it's hard to come by right now.
Yeah.
But, I have,
Lana,
yes.
do you think that a 300-pound paper uses too much paint though? Doesn't it act like a blotter?
Yeah, it's like 300 with arches too. They suck. That's why I don't usually paint on 300. I don't. This was a request by them, but this is called the Fabriano prize. It goes to the museum, so it was a request that is supposed to. It's a long story.
Okay.
So I had no choice but to paint on 300. But my choice is always for all my big paintings is always 140 because of that. Because it does not suck the paint so much.
Yeah.
In my opinion, 140 looks more transparent, the colors. They look less flat. To me, 300, the colors look flat. Is that your opinion too?
Yes, I think so. I painted one many years ago on a 200, and I love that, but you can't find that anywhere.
Yeah, it's I don't even look for it anymore. I know I heard people
Yeah.
speak about it, but yeah, it's impossible.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh well.
but yeah, I tried the what I call the soft press from Fabriano. No, I don't like it. It just feels, just the touch of it is like, ew, it's too soft. It's like, it gives me like, no, and it buckles a lot. Right? Yeah.
So Cheap Joe's is the company that you use mainly?
Yes, Cheap Joe's, and if I don't find something with them, I go to Dick Blick.
Okay.
Yeah, but Cheap Joe's is a nicer guy. So he's a nice guy. So that's why I use Cheap Joe's the most. I had some issues. Jerry's Artorama, that's where I bought the faulty paper, the 20 sheets, and they didn't want to return it to me, the money or
Wow.
anything. So I said, that's it. You don't have my business anymore. But
That's
I
it.
complained. I compiled a whole bunch of information from many artists here in the United States. That was 3 years ago. And I sent the information to Arches, to the main house in Paris. And me and another friend called Lynn Pratt, you probably know Lynn Pratt, she's amazing. And we both compiled that and we sent the information, all the emails and all the, everybody complaining about this and that. And we sent it to them and they sent us, 10 sheets replacement, whatever, to Lynn and to me. But they are very tough. They don't, if you get some faulty sheets,
It's your
you-
problem.
I recommend one thing though, then, is when you get if you buy 10 sheets, do me a favor, right away, use one, cut it in quarters or whatever, use one of them and see if it's good. Because usually the whole batch is all the same paper. If one sheet is bad, the whole batch is gonna be bad. So then you can return it right away. If you wait
Good.
3 months to open the package of sheets,
I get it.
it's bad, you're not gonna get your money back. And now it's expensive. Now it's got even more expensive.
Is there a difference between a pad and individual sheets?
Yes, good point. I was going to mention that. When I started painting, I used the block. There's one class I took once, like one day, and they said recommend the block, and I bought the block more than the pad. Okay, the block. I like it, and I noticed that the bumpy side is up on the block. That's another thing I want to talk about. So I got used to it once the pad was finished, and I saw I was doing okay. Then I went and started buying the loose sheets. And yes, I noticed there was a difference. They are not exactly the same. They seem to behave slightly different. I have not used the block for a long, long time, so I cannot tell you now at this point in time, 15 years later, if the block is as dry as the paper sheets or is less. But I remember it used to absorb beautifully. It used to spread beautifully. I don't know, it was a different effect for me. So, but I don't know right now. But what I wanted to say is, because the block comes with the top page on the bumpy side, I call it bumpy side. I always, when I bought the sheets, I paint on the bumpy side, meaning the bumpy side is where you read the artist's name reversed, where you cannot read it. That's the bumpy side. And what I noticed is that the bumpy side lets the paint spread beautifully. You have more time to play with the paint. You can lift it easier. But the less bumpy side, which is where you read correctly the name artist, that sucks the paint faster, doesn't let the paint lift as much, and you don't have too much time to play to let things spread beautifully. So I've been painting all these years with the bumpy side up, okay? Makes, to me, is a whole huge difference. But let's say that you want to paint things with watermarks, like when you paint, how Salminen paints with all these little watermarks and things. Let's say, what's her name? What's her name now? I forget now. Pam Wenger paints beautiful portraits, or any of these guys that paint portraits, and you see the watermark around every shape of the brush stroke. Those, if you do it on the no bumpy side, they're perfect because you create those watermarks. Think about it. When you do, how you create watermarks is you use a lot of water, right? And you let it dry. And that's going to create all that water that you put in there. It's going to push the pigments to the edges because it's bumpy. The water is a water droplet, right? So it's going to push the pigments to the edge, and it's going to create, when this dries, it's going to have a little ring around of color, right? If I use this in a dry, let me see, let's try like this, that is not going to have any watermark, right? Because the water is just flat in there. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay. So when you want, for a painting, you want watermarks for your painting, use the no bumpy side and use a lot of liquid on each brush stroke and let it air dry. And then you have all these gorgeous watermarks around your shapes, okay? So paper brushes, they all, it depends how you use them, you get different results. And yeah, different papers too. So that's why I don't use the extra white. I try 3 times and that's it, no more. I'm not happy with it and I don't want to use it. I'm looking for a paper towel here. Okay, now, any other questions? No?
When you go in,
Yes. Tell me. Yeah? I thought you
if
somebody.
you go on to that first layer.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to wet that with clear
Yes.
water then first?
Yeah. I was going to do that right now. I think it's a good thing to do. Now, you see, you compare here that to that, okay? So that is much richer, color more intense, more reds into it. So that is now when I go and have my quinacridone burnt orange again, nice and rich and creamy. My pink, that's important. I have my quinacridone rose ready too. At this point, I don't use any other reds, okay? Later, if I need to have a touch of red for more vivid something little, I might have some Pirol red. I love Pirols. Okay, let me spell that one for you too. But, oh, that's right. They call it, some people call it Pirol. I call it Pirol. Sorry, I do the French way or the Spanish way. It's Pirol red. That's the one I use. It's very intense, very vivid, very staining, like whoo kind of thing. So that would be a perfect red for this if you had to have some touches of very intense red. And I used it in here for the touches on this third pot up here. So very vivid red, that's what I use, okay? More than cadmiums. I don't rely on cadmiums that much anymore. I used to, and I can paint with any paint and I'll get the same results. Only the process is different, but I can do the same thing. And the oldest I have used cadmium red medium. Now I use pyrrole red, okay? But let me do for you guys this last layer here so you get to see. So I have my colors ready. I have here my quinacridone burnt orange, and I have my quinacridone rose. And for your benefit, I'm gonna add some of that beautiful brown that I was telling you about, which is the perylene maroon. Which is very, very nice. Let me, wait, where did you go, the chart? So many things here. Okay, yeah, so the pyrrole, yeah, the pyrrole red is over here. No, excuse me, the perylene maroon is over here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, see, for the second layer, it says here I have quinacridone rose. For the darkest dark, I could use also some cobalt blue, perylene maroon, the quinacridone burnt orange as a mix. Wow, I had that as a mix. Wow. See, I do these charts because from one time to the next, I forget how I did things. So it seems like in my second layer, okay, no, look at this. First layer was number one, transitions here. Number two was, again, the same, but adding stronger burnt orange and perylene maroon. Oh, interesting. Let's do that. Okay, so let's do that. Like I say, I can do it many different ways and end up with the same result. Okay, let's unveil this beauty. Yummy. Yum, yum. Look at that beautiful reddish brown. Somebody described it. What do you see that? It's like a dry red blood or something like that. Said, actually, it does. Sorry, but it's a gorgeous color. But unfortunately, it's very misleading. When it dries, it doesn't look so vivid red. It looks more dull. But still, it's a very useful color to have, okay? So if you want it to be very vivid, you can do it yourself too. You can use the pink, your quinacridone rose with some burnt sienna, just put lots of pink on it and you basically get the same. Okay, so you don't really have to buy it specifically. It's very similar. It's just basically burnt sienna with tons of pink on it. So what I'm going to do here, I have a paddle of that perylene maroon, I have the paddle with the quinacridone rose, and I have a paddle, a large one with the quinacridone burnt orange, and it's still the yellow. So yellow, orangey, pinky, and brown. 4 colors, even though it's small there, okay? So what I'm going to do again is to go again with the water near, this time I'm not going even close to the white mark. I'm going to go with the water farther than that. I don't need to get too close, so I'm going farther out with the water, okay? And this time I'm going to that semicircle, I can pronounce that. Let me see, there you go, see? I'm far away from the white. I'm far into the yellow. I'm getting a little wet. This time I don't have to go with the water all the way. I just go about halfway the pot, I can pronounce that, pot with the water. And then so I don't water down this section too much, I'm going to just start with the yellow first a little, just to get the transition here. I just put the yellow on the edge of the water, and I'm going to start working backwards now with this, with the yellow. And I'm going to transition now to the burnt sienna, well, the burnt orange. I'm going to paint the rest with the burnt orange. because if I put water all the way through, then it keeps watering down everything, and it takes forever. Then you need more layers to complete this. So now I'm kind of displacing the paint a little, so it's more even distribute. And then that I have that, I can actually go for the pink maybe. It's creamy. Remember that I had a creamy puddle here. I'm gonna show you. Creamy, okay. I'm going to go here and I'm gonna keep it in this direction. So the paint keeps sliding in this direction. I'm gonna put a few strokes of that pink. Very gentle. Okay, you see now how beautiful it looks already. And I can go a little farther if I need to. Okay, let's go a little farther. Let's go, I'm looking at what happens in here and see that most of the color is here, very little over there, here, very little over here. And here's where it concentrates the color. So I'm putting more color here. My brush still nice and full of color, but just a little bit. So I'm barely touching the paper, touching the surface of the water, okay? So I put just like little dots of color there. So it's a soft transition. Now, while this is still wet, which I'm gonna show you in a second, see how it's still moist?
Yeah.
But it's not puddly. It's not a puddle there. It's just moist, okay? I'm going to go for the, how about the Perlin Maroon? Let's try it. But you don't need to go all the way to the very edge. Sorry, here. You don't need to go all the way to the very edge. You can stop short of it because we're gonna lift some highlights later on over here. So I can start actually this way now. I can start with this on the opposite direction. Now I want it to slide in this direction. So I'm gonna put the paint here. And I'm going to go a little bit more here and there. Very little paint. It's moist, but the shine is kind of disappearing already. So there is not going to run too much because my paint is kind of thick. So I'm just putting the paint. It's starting to lift a little because it's getting dry. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to rinse my brush, dry it, and I'm going to help displace some of that paint here and there a little bit. It was drying too fast, so it was not moving too much. So I don't want to have a hard line. I can go later again and do more, but I'm basically displacing some of the paint to the spots where I want it. I take color from where I don't need it, goes too much, and then I move it, dotting a little farther. Later, I'll do more layers with this, okay? But this is just to get another layer in. So we have another nice layer in there. I'm gonna show you in a second. Again, before you start, you gotta analyze. I was putting the color here, right? But look at this. The top area is lighter than the bottom area. Up here is lighter than in the bottom, okay? So that's why I cannot rely on doing it in 2 layers in that set. You need to now let this dry, and then again, get wet the bottom area and drop more on the bottom again. So I work in sections, especially when my painting is large. I have no choice, you know, section, 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 okay? As you can see, you know, that is looking good. If I have trouble with one, there are too many little dots there, I might clean my brush and keep removing. Oops, make sure that your brush is dry, otherwise you're gonna create a bloom. So I can kind of lift little. If I know I'm gonna put more paint here, so it's no problem. I can go and say add a little of this color here. That was the, what do you call it? The burnt orange. I can put the color, that was dry here, so I can actually put a little water in it and soften it and move it around. I can go darker in here too, doing the same thing. I can add some color here. So for little areas, you just apply the paint first and then rinse your brush, clean water, and spread the edge a little bit. Now, I have a friend, Misha Starchenko. Russian guy that teaches online. It's a great guy. And he's trying to convince me to use the water brushes. Sorry, I've been painting for what? Since I was 18 years old, watercolors without using them. I just can't use the water brushes. But he thinks, no, see, you're rinsing your brush, you're losing all the paint by rinsing your brush, and go, just use a water brush to get the paper wet. I said, I can't. The brush doesn't have the same feel as this brush. So I get confused. I'm gonna make a big mess. So if you are used to water brushes, hello, you know, hurrah for you. But for me, it just doesn't. But the good thing about this thing is, see, as you can see, I'm using all the same brand, more or less. Smaller and smaller brushes that I get to certain areas. This brand is the Robert Simmons White Sable series. This series is 785 series. Robert Simmons White Sable 785. What do I like them? Because they are good quality fibers. They keep the point nicely, but they're not excessively pointy. When a brush is too pointy, you cannot control. It bends too much. The tip bends too much, and you can control on lines. This the tip is fine enough. Now look at this. I can have a size. It must be a size 8. If I load it and rinse well on the side, I can create a nice point for my brush. And I can do almost, you know, all kind of fine lines with it, okay? And then I keep going and going and going and going and going because it has a nice load. If I use the Skoda brush for the little lines, it's nice, you know, it's a size 2, but I run out of paint. You know, I can do very nice lines with it, but I will run out of paint in no time. I can use it though for dry brush. It's a great thing because you rinse it, and I can do beautiful dry brush with the little ones, the stiff ones. You know, you can do great things. If they absorb too much liquid, then it's hard to do the dry brush. But this one, the Skoda Perla, because a little more stiff than my Robert Simmons, you can make a very nice thin line, and at the same time, you can also do a great dry brush. Okay.
When I was using the Skoda Perla, I was finding, I thought the brush was too long. I mean, not the handle, but the hair.
The hair thing. Yeah. Yeah, I hate it when they're too long too. I don't like it.
And I almost was thinking of cutting them, and then I thought, well, maybe that wouldn't be the
it's
thing
hard.
to do. But
That's funny.
But you're saying the Robert Simmons 785?
Yeah, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna compare the length. I have the also number 2. Also in a second. This one. Okay. Yeah, me too. Okay, let's compare them in white paper so you can see better. That's number 2. Yeah, when I went to Spain, I loaded as many as they had in the store. I bought because they had only like 3 or 4 of the size 2, and here I couldn't find it. It was half the price of what I paid here for them. It was like $5 or something, and here like $12 or whatever. So anyway, sorry. Yeah, this other brand you might be familiar with. That's the Loew Cornell. This one, that has the red tip here. Well, you cannot find them anymore. They're out of. You only find them in Canada now. What happened with this? They were too pointy too. They were too long and pointy, and I hated that. But my students gave them to me, so I just trimmed the edge. I can use them now.
Okay, you did trim them.
Yeah,
It's funny.
A little bit because it was like, yeah, those little 3 hairs at the end. It's like you just can't control those. So these, you're gonna see when you get this one wet. That's a size 2, and that's a size 2. So lengthwise, they're the same. The Skoda Perla and this one, and the other I have. Let me see, 8 Skoda Perla. Like I say, I tried to buy from the Skoda Perla. I found it about the same size as my, and I find them as normal size. I find it's a normal size. Yeah, those are normal size. See, they're the same. No, the scoper is a little shorter than my 4, unless it's a 6. Yeah, it's a 4. It's a little shorter than my Robert Simmons. But like I say, these are a little softer, these are a little stiffer. So if you have trouble with lines or whatever, this might be more helpful for you. I find that these hold more liquid and more paint, and they're soft enough. You know, I control them beautifully. I love them. This, to me, they're too flimsy. They make me nervous. But until I found these guys, I was using that one. Okay, but this is just like gorgeous, gorgeous. I love it. And believe it or not, this one.
And which one was that you thought was gorgeous?
Is the size 12 of the same Robert Simmons. It's just the same. But oh, wait a second. This the first one, when I got the paper wet earlier on, I think when I did this one, I believe, this was a Cheap Joe's White Knight, size 14. It's fantastic too. And it's just a white sable. And I don't think it cost me more than what, $7 or $8. Oh, I'm talking about 10 years ago. Very nice. I mean, that's my size 14, but wait, there is more, like they say in the infomercials. This is a beauty. That's the Princeton Neptune, size 8. That is glorious. When you have a large painting, I mean, this thing, unfortunately, it sucks so much that when I do one of my puddles here, I better make a lot of it because I put it in, sucks it up, and there's nothing left in there. So you have to be careful with that. This is for large paintings where you need a lot of water, a lot of color. And the problem is if I use it with color, to get it off the color, I can rinse it and rinse it and rinse it and rinse it, and it's not going off. So I only use it usually to apply the water because I don't want to ruin it with, you know, with the phthalo green. I will never get it off. But it's gorgeous. It's I don't know what kind of natural hair it is. Probably it's black squirrel, but it's a beauty. I love it. I'm in love with it. And this, yes, tell me.
What do you put your biscuit on with?
Very good. Ta-da, here we come. Very good question. Let me use a piece of paper here. This, very simple tools. Where's my brush? Basically, it's a size 4 brush. Oh, where did it go? It's black. See, I'm very, since I'm half blind, I have to rely on colors to find things. Oh, where did it go, my black brush? Oh, well, I can use this one. Oh, no, that's my good one. I'm sorry. One second. I just don't want to use one of my good ones, even though I clean them out. Here it is. Okay. I received as well awards and prizes, whatever, many different paint, many brushes. And this is a Richardson, or I don't know which one it is, but it's a size 4 probably, or 6, hard to tell. I think it's a, yeah, I think it's a 4. No, must be a 6. Okay, now, what do I use? To apply large areas, what I do is I have a cendrier, which is a cenicero, or how you call it, for smokers from dollar store.
An ashtray.
I just can't.
That's funny.
I can say it in any language, but in English, I just can't.
That's funny.
I'm 60. I'm gonna be 61 in a few days, and I have the, how you call it. My brain has been in default since I turned 40, so words are hard to find sometimes. Anyway, so I have a piece of probably ivory soap that's got all funny, you know, from rubbing it so much, it made a little hole in there. So what I do is I put a little piece of soap, little water, get my brush wet. This is the one that I use always for my skin fluid. So it's clean, has no color of any kind left in it. And I rub it in, can you guys see it? I rub it in there until it gets, my brush, the hair gets kind of cloudy. This brush is a synthetic brush of whatever, but it's kind of soft. It's more or less like my Robert Simmons. It's some kind of soft synthetic. And once I see it gets more or less cloudy with the soap, I rinse it to the side. But actually, this is, sorry, any little containers that you have at home, you're gonna open your bottle of masking fluid. Let's do it with this one so you guys see better. And you are going to pour just as much as you're gonna need. You don't want to put back into the bottle the leftovers because it contaminates the rest. So you pour in there, you close. The longer you have your bottle open, the more goo, it will turn into goo in a matter of months. So you need to open, close, and put it away. Now, do not shake your bottle before you open it. All those little bubbles that you create will create bubbles in the, when you put it on the paper, and then they will go poof, 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 till it start exploding, and they'll leave little holes where the paint will go.
Oh,
So do not shake it. What I do is I roll it gently. Now and then, whenever I see it there, I say, oh, let's roll it. And so it doesn't congeal on the bottom. So very gently. This one is getting old now. It's been 1 year old here, open. And I see that's kind of like when milk goes bad, I had that funny kind of streaks
yes.
going on.
Mhm.
So it's starting to go a little funny on me.
What
Anyway,
is the brand name again?
that's PBO. Okay, let me write it here. I told you guys I was going to talk a lot. It's French, and it has all those accents on it, but I believe, I don't know, is that way or that way? PBO, whoops, this way, that way, okay? PBO. So what I do here is I have the container, I have my brush wet with, where did it go? Oh, here. Okay, so my brush is wet, la, la, la. I rinse on this side because I don't want to have loaded with soap like crazy. Otherwise, it's going to dilute my masking fluid too much, right? Rinse a little and go in here. And then I apply whatever I have to apply it, right? But if you want to apply it very fine, obviously rinse as much as you can on the edge to create a fine point so you can control how thin your line is going to be. That's for a large area. Yes.
What does the soap do on your brush?
The soap, it just protects it from getting gooey. What happens is if you do not put the soap on this, you put it in here, in a matter of minutes, this becomes a solid blob.
Hmm.
And goodbye.
Interesting.
Completely goodbye. So it's gone. You can use, I think it's ammonia to try to clean it again, but it's no guarantee it's going to be good again. So that's why, just in case mistakes happen, I forget, I'm talking too much and I forget to clean or whatever, I always use one specifically for, that's why it has the pink here and the other thing there, so I can identify it. And this one you're gonna see now that after I finish doing all these things, I can just go rinse it here a little bit, use the soap again, rinse it again. And when I have a minute, I'll cover it here in soap and put it aside. And when I have a minute, I'll go to the bathroom and rinse it. You do not want to rinse it in the same water you are using for painting, because it might be a disaster. It might be some strange things happening in your painting later on. So this has to have its own little kit, completely different, okay? So this, then it's 1 second, there's another tool that you can use. It's called the Incredible Nib. You can also use, like my friend Lynn Pratt says, you cut a Q-tip for your ears. You actually cut the, if it's the plastic kind of Q-tip, you can cut it at an angle and use almost like a quill, and you can use it to apply the masking fluid. Or you can use this, the Incredible Nib, again, so I can find it. I put all these colors in it. But it's called the Incredible Nib. And it's some kind of fiber that lets the liquid slide slowly, so you control, it doesn't come all in a blob. So I don't need to put soap on it. I just go like this and use it directly in the little spot where I need to put it. Little dots, little lines. And then I just go on my hand clean like this, or rinsing water, not on your water, always in a separate water, and it's fine. This comes in many different brands and sizes, and this is the same system, the same thing, and it's called dipstick. That's a funny name. It's the dipstick, and it comes in a bevel shape, but I don't use the bevel shape, whatever you pronounce that. So I trimmed it like this one too. It was bevel in there too. This was round tip, which is falling apart. My cat chew it. Keep it away from your cat, by the way. And this one I cut it to have more choices. I cut it into a point. Yes, if you have cats, this is latex. Latex made with some kind of animal fats. So just like balloons and condoms, cats love that smell. So I seen videos of cats dragging all kind of different things around the house because it's made of latex. So yeah, so my cat, when we had a cat, used to, I said, where is my incredible nib? I keep losing them until I found them. He hid them underneath the bed in a corner. He used to all my gloves for washing the dishes, all the gloves, always the left hand, don't ask me why, and all my little sticks. So keep them away from your cat. So anyway, so, oh, another good tip. You know what this gooey, yucky thing is? When the masking fluid dries, you leave it overnight. Let's say there's some left over there. If you leave it alone, it will dry and form some kind of funny layer. So you'll have to kind of scrape it with your finger. It will come into some kind of gummy looking thing like this. Guess what? It's perfect for removing masking fluid. Remember that this is what I was using. It's called the rubber cement. See, I write it down so I don't forget what it's called. Rubber cement, but see, I had to constantly clean it up so I don't make a mess. I use sometimes the scissors. But this, if you don't have the rubber cement, pick it up there, you can use some of these leftovers bunched together, and they will lift. You saw how I left the masking fluid here with this. It will do the same job, okay?
Oh, neat.
So all these little tricks I know. Now, the last one thing, because I don't want to put you to sleep, is this brush. Sorry, guys. My mother used to say, ay, hija mía, you're so monotone. You put me to sleep. So I learned my lesson. And now and then I try to make people wake up. Okay, so this is the last thing. This is the brush I was telling you about. I don't own any of those very expensive brushes that people buy that cost $150 or even $60. I don't. This is another cheap Joe's. No, I bought in cheap Joe's. It's a Da Vinci. Is black goat hair, and is a 30. No, they call it 30, I guess, centimeters, but it's not really. That will be 30 millimeters, I guess. Yeah, 30 millimeters. Those are the ones I use for the large washes in my paintings. Well, medium. If it was, see, for something like this, yes. If I need to make it even larger, I have something that's even.
Please repeat. I am so sorry.
Yes, I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to write it down again. That.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
What is the largest size?
Yeah, it's a large, and there's a
watercolor
40. Yeah, I have a 40. I have a 30. I have two 30s and one 40. Why? Because I told you the same thing that happened with my beauty one. Once you get them onto the phthalo green, oh my God, to get it off your brush is going to be always contaminated with the green. So I have one for my greens and blues and one for my pinks and yellows. That way, I don't have to worry too much if the brush is not completely perfectly. And I use the 40 and the 40 millimeters. See, that one is the blue, that one is for the pinks. And the one that's 40 millimeters is the one I use to put the water on the paper. So I only use it for water unless I'm using for a very, very large painting, okay? So to me, it's a good idea to have two of them. And I don't think they were very expensive. So these are Da Vinci, Black Goat, muddlers. don't ask me why they're called that. I think it's 2 T's, Muddler. Da Vinci Black Goat Muddler. And it's the size 30, or also if you want to, 40. And like I say, now and then they lose 1 hair or 2. So before I start using them, I make sure that nothing comes out, you know. And when I finish using them, I rinse them, bam, bam, bam. I use regular soap, and then I dry them like this. Once they're completely dry, well, excuse me, clean, I put them over paper towel, fold it over, press down to absorb as much of the water as possible, and I let it dry flat. Okay. And I had these guys for, I don't know, 10 years or I don't know how long. So it's how you treat your brushes really, really helps. Oh, this one looks a little wider. Anyway, so any more questions? Anybody?
I have questions, but it relates more to your path of success as far as maybe enlightening.
Let me change that. Let me change that now to this image here. Pin me on the replace pin, maybe. There, so I can see. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, better. Yeah, no more table. Not that I want you guys to see my face, but I can relate better to you guys. Let me see who's speaking here.
Amy.
Amy. Let's see if I can find you. Well, I'm not sure where you went, but
Where
anyway,
did I?
hi, Amy. Yeah. Okay. So, so what's your question?
Okay, wait a second.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have. I don't see your face there. That's why.
I know. I'm trying to get it back on here. I don't know why.
Okay. Gotcha, Amy.
Okay.
Oh, yes, that's right. There you are.
Okay. On your path to success, can you enlighten maybe us a little bit about, did you start locally? Did you start with, you know, local areas? Did you expand international afterwards? Did you venture shows? Just a little bit about your path.
Okay. Actually, yes. Years ago, I was painting watercolors. I was in New Jersey. Actually, I lived in Sussex County. I lived in Mercer County near Princeton, Hopewell. Then I lived in Sussex County for many years during my first marriage. So I painted there. I was, what do you call it? Liaison for the associate members for the New Jersey Watercolor Society for a couple of years. But then in 2002, I divorced, got married again up here in New York. And I stopped painting because I got pregnant. They fixed my thyroid. And at 43, I got my baby. So I had to stop painting because I had a small child and a demanding husband that wanted to have cooked meals. So I stopped painting for about 10 years. So then in 2013, I decided to come back. It was like a new world. Internet, Facebook, groups, like a whoa. So before that, in New Jersey, yeah, people knew me, but not that many. It was only a little circle in Morris County, Sussex County, and that was it. There was no way to expand. And a little bit in New York. I did exhibit in New York City sometimes. But I was doing mostly, that's how people knew me, I was doing all local street scenes, meaning all local, like Newton Main Street and Morristown Big Square and all the farms in the area. And I did a lot of commissions for houses and pets. So people knew me. But then when I went back in 2013, I saw that there was tons of people. I look on the internet and say, everybody's doing the same thing. You know, I wanted to try something different.
Right.
So then I started doing the still lifes. But how did I start? I needed to get money. I needed to teach. I needed to get myself known. And yes, what I did, it was local area. It had a couple little, of course, the Walker River School. That was important to me, very important to me. And I started exhibiting locally, meaning first I went to the libraries. and I volunteer. I gave 2 or 3 classes for free. So people in the area started knowing me. Then that opened doors to exhibit on my own, my own show at the library. They invited me to exhibit at the Orange County, the hospital thing. So once you get volunteering is the best thing in the world. First thing, it makes you feel good. If you're doing something for society, and opens your doors everywhere. So that's the way I started. And then because of the internet, once you get on Facebook, you have to spend the time. If you do not comment on people, nobody's going to know you. You have to comment on people's pages. And if they comment on yours, you have to reply and say, thank you very much, I appreciate it. You have to be proactive with it. That's how I keep deleting people from my Facebook page, because once you hit 5,000, nobody can sign up. So I'm reserving about 500 for when, for the important people. So I keep deleting those, sorry to say, those Indian people that don't know me at all. And they don't, so those I delete, bam, 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 bam. So I keep more or less 4,500 in Facebook. And I comment on everybody's, every time I see something coming up, I make an effort. And people ask me questions and I reply to their questions. And that's how you grow, because people say, oh, you're so nice, thank you, thank you, thank you. And they share your painting with other people, they share with other groups, and then it goes exponential. And then very quickly it's called the IWS, the International Watercolor Society thing. I started with those people, and for a while I was the president of the American branch of it. It's a long story, but because of friends, you have to kind of spy sometimes in your friends. Say, oh, he's exhibiting in Greece. I wonder how he exhibited in Greece. You see who's his friend in Greece. Say, oh, I gotta make friends with that guy. Boom, Facebook friend. And then sure enough, this guy saw my paintings. He liked my paintings. He invited me to exhibit in Greece. So you have to be very proactive with the social media.
Yeah. Sometimes you have a long audience. Sometimes it's you do that and you do communicate, and but it's just not the people that you really need to be connected with. So it is challenging.
Yeah, but it's little by little. I mean, sorry, Ellen, I'll get to you in a second. I see your hand over there. For example, I just been selected to also to the Fabriano Prize, which is very prestigious. They only invite 64 artists from the whole world to exhibit there, right? Once a year. Why did I get invited? Because this guy from Greece asked me to please take his painting to the American Watercolor Society show this year. What happens is he got accepted, I got accepted, my friend from Italy got accepted, my friend from Argentina got accepted, and all 3 of them say, Lana, can you please frame me the painting and take it to the, and say, yeah, sure. So you are nice to other people, they're gonna be nice to you too.
Yes.
So it is, pay it forward. So you gotta pay it. Okay, Ellen is raising her hand over there. I want to hear her question. Yes, Ellen, tell me.
Ellen Barnett.
Yes.
I have another video at another Zoom at 12:30. So I will have to leave. But can you quickly tell us how you draw the initial drawing on your paper before you even begin, the drawing? How do you what is your process there?
I'm very good at drawing. All my life since very little. The teachers in the school, they asked me to go 5 years old and I'm drawing for the teacher. So that was lucky me that I was able to do that. So for simple projects, I do by hand because I never copy exactly what I have in my photo. Very rarely I have the perfect photo. So I had to improvise many things. But I have to say, and I confess this with no problem, when I had to do a large painting, I enlarge my screen, let's say certain area, and I trace that area with semi-transparent paper. And then from that, just the outlines. I don't need the detail. The details I'm gonna change anyway. Like I said, I change the direction of the cloth. I change the direction of this and that. But to save myself time at this point in my life, I don't have the time to spend 8 hours. You know, if I can do it 2 hours, happy for me. So I actually have large screens here. So I trace little by little by little. I trace in semi-transparent paper, which is called, it's from Canson, you know, that kind of like architect transparent paper. And then I actually do the perfect drawing there. I finish all the details by hand, everything. And then I use one of those light boxes for the window. And little by section, I I trace it onto my watercolor paper. I never draw directly on the watercolor paper, even if it's the easiest thing, because I don't like disturbing the paper at all. And when I draw, I'm the kind that draws with traces like this. So I don't go just like this. I just go. So if I have to erase all those things, it will disturb the paper, and it's not good. You'll see later all that kind of blurriness, and so.
Well, I have to leave, but I want to thank you very much for the effort that you made in sharing all of this with you. I've learned a lot. I'm not a watercolorist, but I'm tempted to try now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I have to leave now.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you
Very much.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Nice. Thank you. Anybody else has more questions? Now that I confess my secret that I trace a little bit. I don't do anything worse than that. No, it's like I said, I pride myself on being a good drawing artist, but I have to save time. I don't have the time. I work in Spain in advertising for a couple of years, and they say, "Why are you wasting your time?" So they taught me, they say, "Come on, stop the nonsense. This has to be done in 2 hours. Let's go. I say, okay. You say so."
Yeah, I agree with you. Time is too short to be doing everything from scratch just to prove that you can.
Exactly.
That isn't the end goal anyway. There's more to be done to it. So
exactly. And actually, if you, even though mostly don't confess to it, if you look at the drawings of some of the realistic watercolors, you can see they draw every single thing, and you can tell it's being traced with transfer paper or whatever. So it's clear. So it's just nobody wants to talk about it, but it's a fact. Everybody's doing it these days. So
yeah, I've always done the big shapes, because then the details you can put in and draw them in, and it looks better than tracing. But you know, just the big outlines, getting things in the right place.
To position things.
It saves you a lot of hours.
Yeah, and also it's because if you draw, see, when I do my workshops and I send the line drawing to my students, see, my paintings are more complicated. That, let's say, Lynn Pratt, she does these beautiful projects, but they are not very elaborated, right? Or Anna Mason, any of those people that do these big classes. But my projects are much more complicated. So if I put in the line drawing, if I put every detail on it, I know that my students, my participants, are gonna trace everything hard. And then the highlight is gonna have a dark line around the highlight, and it's you won't be able to erase it. So I guess, nope, sorry guys, you're gonna have to use freehand. I give them the outline and the major shapes, and that's it. So they have to, otherwise I know what happens, so.
Yeah.
Anything else? I'm having so much fun. I don't want to go. I'm having too much fun.
So much. This was so informative.
It sure was.
It
sure was. I'm a watercolorist, and I learned quite a bit from you. But I would like to remind you, Lana, not to share that link for the black tape with us, please, because that looks real great.
Very good. Let's see if I can.
Lana, if you don't have it right now, you could always email it to me, and I'll send it to everybody.
I have it.
Thank you, Maria.
I put it here because I know that people keep asking me about it. It's here. So, okay. Are you seeing it reversed? Are you seeing a reverse? But it's not very clear, right?
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I will send you the link by email so you guys can just
that would be great.
Yeah,
and then we can email it out to everybody.
Much better.
But you're saying that tape is better because it doesn't leave any sticky residue? Is that it?
Exactly. What happens is, let's say the white one, I don't trust it. For example, I try many different brands, even the 3M. I left it like 2 weeks on it. It was summertime. It was warm enough. And when I peel it off, all the goo, and I try everything, I could not remove the goo out of it. This one I have left on boards for a year. No problem. I can remove it. Left any, never. And I use, I rely heavily on hair dryers constantly. And this one has been always wonderful. The only thing I noticed recently, maybe it's not as sticky as it used to be. Maybe it was this particular roll, but let's say it was only 80% as sticky as usual. Meaning it stuck beautifully to the paper here, but when I painted it here, the part that goes, the part that goes over the paper lifts a little bit, like saying, it's not holding too much anymore. I was wondering, but I love it anyway.
So the water goes through? The water?
No, it doesn't go through. No, it doesn't go through. No, it's just simply that the paper, I think it's the paper. The paper has been shrinking more than usual, so it pulls so much that it pulls off the tape. So the tape stays put on the board, but it lifts a little there. So it just pops open by saying, oh, I release you. So, and I think it's the paper more than anything. But no, I love it because you press it down when you are trying to mask something. You are pressing down like this a couple of times. Nothing goes through that. Nothing. It's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I really, really love it because I tried. I have right here on my table. A friend of mine who's also a wonderful teacher, recommended the blue tape, the one that is the Sharp Lines multi-surface, Sharp Lines multi-surface, number 2093, the blue tape thing. But to me, I find them very distracting. I don't like blue and green and yellow. I want black one. Is just, first, it's elegant. Ooh, looks nice. It helps you to see the values in your painting. And it just looks nice. And blue is just distracting for me. But it seems to be about the same stickiness as mine. It's just that I don't dare to use it. Maybe, for the masking of for the masking of this, maybe, because it's just only a little bit. And then after that, I take it off. But for the margins, most definitely I would use my black again and again. And this one, surprising enough, this cheaper one, which if I find it, I will find it because I bought it recently on Amazon. I'll send you the link for this one too. I'm very satisfied with it, I have to say, because you saw that I painted over here and it didn't lift. So it just came out nicely, and I like it too. And also, it's very good. It's like surgical tape. And this nail broke the other day, and all the band-aids were coming off and getting gooey. So I cut a piece just to cover the nail. It stayed the whole day nice and clean. I said, what? Better than surgical tape. So now you know, double the usefulness. So anyway,
well, this has been great. It really has. We really appreciate you coming on, taking your time to do this.
Thank you so much for inviting me.